is at the Court of Appeal, where we are expecting that big ruling today by the Court of Appeal. Patrick, good morning, if you can hear me. What is going on? Are the proceedings on yet? What are we expecting today?
Good morning, Kitili. We expect the proceedings to start any time from 9:30 this morning, where the five judges of the Court of Appeal will make their ruling with regard to the IEBC petition that wants them to overturn the decision by the High Court that ordered IEBC to issue a fresh tender for the printing of the presidential ballot papers for the August 8th polls. This is a matter that IEBC did argue that it will interfere with their timelines because they claim that they are running against time, and that's why they had to appeal that decision, saying that the other ballot papers for the five elective positions, that is a member of County Assembly, women representative, governor, senator, and member of the National Assembly, together with that of the Senate, had been printed by Al Ghurair, the Dubai-based firm, which has raised controversy over these ballot papers. So the IEBC lawyers were arguing that by virtue of the High Court having said that these five positions should be printed by Al Ghurair, it was not very right, because they claim that the ruling would have done away, it would have quashed the entire tendering process to Al Ghurair, and by virtue that it was only affecting the presidential ballot, that's why IEBC is arguing that they want the Court of Appeal to overturn that decision. But for the opposition, National Super Alliance, they are arguing that there were reasons, they're expressing fears that they're claiming that Jubilee, as presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta, had contact with some of those top executives of Al Ghurair, especially the chairperson, during their meeting last year when the Dubai-based Chamber of Commerce and Industry visited Nairobi. But IEBC did indicate, and even the High Court also maintained, that there was no such contact between the president and Al Ghurair firm. So mention of bias on this particular instance of the tender could not obtain. So, but the matter, because now the High Court did find out that IEBC flouted the procurement law and the Constitution, especially on Article 10, which requires public participation in this procurement process. It was the High Court's ruling that IEBC should have involved the public in the procurement of these particular tender, even though it entered a direct procurement process. But we saw IEBC argue early this week. IEBC argued that that particular public participation, as required in Article 10 of our Constitution, does not mean public participation. We saw IEBC lawyer Paul Muite argue that it was participation of the people and not public participation. So that is a play about of the semantics here, and they maintained that IEBC did maintain that public participation is not mandatory when it comes to direct procurement, a matter that NASA or the opposition and other players like the Third Force Alliance Party also did argue against, saying that it was very, very critical for the public to participate. But then we saw IEBC argue that they invited the principals of Jubilee and NASA, which according to IEBC they claim that they represent 90% of voters, and to them then maybe parties, other players other six candidates who are participating in the presidential vote, maybe they claim they control less than 10% of the voters. So maybe according to IEBC that was negligible, and they could not be consulted in this particular critical matter in the run-up to the August 8th poll. So it's a matter that will be listened to see how the Court of Appeal judges will rule on it, given that it's only 18 months to the election. But also maybe to bring you up to speed is that we have reports that IEBC has been setting up contingency plans in case the Court of Appeal upholds the High Court decision and says that the presidential ballot papers should be printed by a separate firm. We understand that IEBC has lined up at least five international firms to participate in the tender should its appeal before the Court of Appeal be quashed. Kiteli?
Patrick, before I let you go, there are some people who say because of the shortness of the time between now and the election, 18 days to be specific. IEBC is almost sure of getting its way in the ruling expected later today.
Yeah, that particular matter, remember, the controversy has been ongoing because in February this year we saw the High Court also decide to quash this particular tender, but it appears IBC was not took its stride, and when the matters came to the public domain that they had already signed a contract with Al Ghurair on June 8th for the printing of ballot papers to start on June 22nd. That's when we saw the opposition come on board and try to argue against this particular matter, saying that they had not been consulted. And IEBC now arguing that they are against timelines. We've seen the opposition NASA say that they cannot entertain the inefficiencies from the part of IEBC, given that they knew the elections was to be done to be held August 8th. So we saw NASA lawyers argue that if the Court of Appeal would allow IEBC to go ahead and implement this contract as it is, then it will be like giving IEBC an open check to flout the procurement rules. So it is a daisy matter, and we'll see how the Court of Appeal will go about it, because IEBC had clear timelines to argue to ensure that the entire process is clear, but they've said that they've been also battling a lot of they've been having a lot of cases in the courts with regard to the procurement of various materials with regard to the August elections. That's why they're arguing that maybe even at present they are finding themselves still in the courts to argue different things to do with the procurement of election material. But then we saw even in the High Court, the three judges of the High Court said that they will not allow IBC its own inefficiencies to go through in the way of procuring the ballot papers. So it will be interesting to see whether the Court of Appeal will indict IEBC over the processes of procuring these ballot papers and election materials, or they'll be soft on them. But as it were, we are having 18 days to the elections, but that verdict, we will be getting it when the 5 judges walk to this hall and start delivering their ruling. Because after early this week they had after last week they had at least submissions from both IEBC, Al Ghurair, Jubilee, and other interested players in this particular matter. Kiteli.
Thank you, Patrick. Patrick Amimo at the Court of Appeal. A 5-judge bench of the Court of Appeal is expected to either uphold or reverse that appeal by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission about a ruling an earlier ruling by a 3-judge High Court bench, which had ordered IEBC to halt the printing of the presidential ballot papers and reissue the tender. We are keeping an eye on that developing story for you. Now, the High Court, meanwhile, has